That's not a warning. That's a sequence of events. You think you know what an oil shock looks like. You think it's gas prices climbing, airlines complaining, maybe a few months of discomfort before something gets fixed. You've seen it before. You've absorbed it before. You kept driving. It sounds temporary. It sounds inconvenient. It sounds exactly like a problem that belongs to someone else's budget. It is wrong in almost every dimension. There are three completely different things people collapse into one vague anxiety. An oil price spike. Painful. Inflationary. It passes. A supply disruption. A war. A hurricane. A blocked canal. Markets adjust. It costs you, and then it ends, and then there is a sustained price break above $200. Not a shock. Not a disruption. A fundamental repricing of every physical thing that moves, grows, or gets made on this planet. That is what we are talking about here. Day 1. The number crosses $200 and the financial world reacts before your morning coffee is finished brewing. Airline stocks collapse in a single session. Freight indexes spike in ways that make shipping executives go quiet. Central banks issue statements. The statements say nothing. Traders know they say nothing. The dollar moves in directions that contradict each other within the same hour. Nobody is certain what anything costs to make anymore. They are about to find out. Week 2. Prices begin appearing in places you stopped watching. Groceries. The tag on a box of cereal you've bought 100 times. The cost of a delivery that used to be free. Restaurants start repricing menus mid-week. Some don't bother reprinting them. Small businesses that run on thin margins and borrowed float begin making calculations that don't work. The calculations don't suddenly start working. Month 2. The governments move. Emergency energy subsidies. Price caps on fuel that create shortages instead of solving them. Every intervention plugs one hole and quietly opens 3 more. The IMF begins revising growth forecasts downward in language so careful it barely disguises what it means. What it means is recession. What it actually means, for the bottom half of most economies, is something considerably harder than the word recession suggests. Then come the consequences that don't appear on the evening financial report. Aviation doesn't slow down. It amputates. Low-cost carriers, the ones that made flying ordinary for ordinary people, start filing for protection they won't find. Leisure travel doesn't decline. It stops being a realistic option for the majority of households that were already spending at their limit. Hospitality follows. Tourism-dependent economies, entire nations that restructured around the assumption of arrivals, face balance of payment crises that make their currencies unreliable by the end of the quarter. Logistics stops being invisible. The era in which you bought something online and didn't think about how it crossed an ocean ends without ceremony. Freight costs get passed forward until they can't be, and then the product simply stops arriving. Just-in-time supply chains were engineered for a world where fuel was a manageable variable. They were never stress-tested against a world where it becomes the largest cost on the spreadsheet. Efficiency and resilience have always been opposites. The system chose efficiency. You are now living with that choice. Geopolitics gets louder. Nations sitting on state-controlled reserves. Russia, the Gulf producers. Venezuela with its chaos and its barrels. Experience a financial windfall so large it rewrites what pressure means. Sanctions become theoretical. Military budgets expand without debt. Meanwhile, the heavy importers, Europe, Japan, South Korea, large portions of South and Southeast Asia, face a structural crisis in their trade accounts that no domestic policy can fully absorb. Foreign policy stops being about values. It becomes about pipelines. If your income depends on discretionary spending, retail, hospitality, travel, events, anything people do when they feel comfortable, you are not watching this from the outside. You are in it. Your sector contracts first and rehires last. Your savings, measured in dollars that now buy less of nearly everything physical, are not what the number says they are. But here is the part that never leads the broadcast. High enough prices, held long enough, break the logic of the old system permanently. Internal combustion engine sales don't decline slowly. They fall off a cliff the moment the math becomes undeniable at the pump. Renewables stop being ideological. They become the cheaper option, visibly and immediately, and capital flows accordingly, not out of conscience, but out of arithmetic. EV adoption, heat pump installations, grid infrastructure investment. Everything that was moving at the pace of policy suddenly moves at the pace of survival. It happened in the 1970s. Slowly, then irreversibly. It happened everywhere. Oil became too expensive to ignore. Don't just look at the price and call it temporary. History shows that energy transitions always arrive. The question was never whether the transition comes. The question is, how much of the existing economy gets burned through before it does? The pipe that carries the future has already been laid. The only thing left to decide is whether you know what's flowing through it before you need to drink.